Hey everyone, it is 7:36. It looks like a little bit delayed. And we have one trustee, just so we know to the public and for the record, who is at home, coming in by Zoom because he is not feeling well, nor is his family. So he will be zooming in from home, which is allowed for these meetings. Okay, let's start with the pledge and then we will go into legislative session. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
Trustee Fritchie? Trustee White? Trustee Quesada?
Present.
Trustee Lopez?
Present.
Mayor Levin?
Present.
Okay, we have our public hearing. The first one is on the Village of Austin's 2023 budget. Is there anybody here from the public that would like to speak for the public hearing? If so, please raise your virtual hand.
I don't see anyone with their hands up.
Oh, we opened the public hearing and how long is that to be open? Well, no, we're not gonna close, but there's no. Right, I just think some people probably late or something, so. Let's stay open with it if there's nobody on right now. We're not gonna close it tonight, are we? What happened? Okay.
Mayor, we don't have another meeting before it has to be adopted, so it would be ordinarily we would close it tonight.
Okay,
Stuart, can you speak into the microphone?
I'm sorry, Jamie. Ordinarily, we would close tonight because there is no subsequent meeting before the December 7th adoption date.
not feeling good about this.
What about if we have to do a special meeting just for that one on the 30th?
Well, I don't want to do a special meeting. I just want to keep it at least open for a little bit longer in case people are running late. There's a fire up the street, people might be busy.
There's no objection if you want to keep it open now and then come back to it.
That's what I like to do.
You most
That's why I
certainly
said people might be running a little late.
That's
Usually they
perfectly fine.
know we're like gathering in the beginning, so they might know us well. And I just at least want to keep it open for tonight so that if somebody comes on, okay? All right. Martha, we're keeping it open. Stephen,
So then our second public hearing is on the proposed local law 11 of 2022, a local law amending chapter 241 taxation of the Village of Austin Code. Is there anybody who would like to speak for this public hearing? If so, please raise your virtual hand.
There is no one that is raising their hand.
this one.
Motion to close and then close it.
I'll make a motion to close over here.
There you go. Favor?
Omar, do you mind speaking into the microphone? I didn't mean Omar. I'm sorry, Manny. I apologize.
Oh, Omar, I think you have to vote too.
Are we voting? Did we vote?
Yeah.
Oh,
On the
aye.
taxation law to close.
Oh, yeah, definitely aye.
Okay. Loud as it goes. Just raise your hand with thumbs up or something when we're voting. Martha can't hear you.
Okay, so moving on to mayor's, oh, sorry. We
Yeah.
voted on the agreement, okay. Mayors and trustees announcements?
Okay. I have a major announcement, but I'm gonna let others speak if they have to. Or want to, I should say.
I don't have anything, Mayor.
Stage is yours.
Well, very, very exciting news. First of all, thank you to, and you'll see why I'm thanking, because I gotta do the gratitude first. Maddie Sahaj, Stuart, Karen, and of course, my buddy all day long today, Jamie Hoffman, who does our communication. The reason I'm thanking this particular group is that for quite a while now, I would say hundreds of hours of work now, we have been applying, and I've discussed this before, for for a $7 million grant from NYSERDA for an e-bike initiative. E-bike sounds to some people a little funny, $7 million for a bike, you're kidding me, right? No, not kidding you. This is really about a mobility initiative. New York State has designated to NYSERDA and a few other agencies at the state level for the past 2 years have set up a little bit of a challenge, a competition with mobility and environmentalists who are innovative thinkers as far as alternative energy for mobility. E-bikes, e-cars, a company like Revel, which some of you see in the city, e-buses for school buses, because by 2050, all of New York State will have to be electric, all of the school buses. That was one of the funniest presentations, by the way, of the day. So we saw a whole bunch of presentations. There were a number of winners. There will be a press release from NYSERDA if it's not out there already, and they'll tell you who all the winners are. There are about 9 or 10 winners. The most important winner in that entire category is Austining, who won $7 million vis-a-vis their consultants. So if we were doing a live thing, I'd like ask for music and drum rolls and all that. So about a year ago, we were told we had a $10 million grant from the state of New York to really help us with infrastructure needs, to really start looking at big projects, because winning, 10 and 15,000 grants is nice. It just doesn't really move the needle in any meaningful way. If you really want to change, make significant change to a community that really benefits the community, you've really got to talk about $1 million plus. So we are now almost at $20 million in grants for the past, year and a half, really, looking for grants. And I just think it's fantastic. And it really, kudos. I do have to mention that Maddie did come to us, and I know there were other people involved, but it does go to show you that when you've got your eyes open and you really have intention of becoming very environmentally oriented or anything, whether it's infrastructure or not, and you start looking at the grants that are available out there, and you start searching them with real intention, you find some really interesting solutions. This came through from our consultants who were doing the parking and mobility study. They actually brought to us, and they're actually the ones that won, by the way. We are the pilot, and we will be significantly responsible for the success of this program over the 2 years, not just in spending the money, but making significant difference. There'll probably be some hiccups, there'll be some issues, there'll be all sorts of things. I expect all staff members to be on e-bikes by this time next year, because I already have one. Yes, I'm looking at you, village manager, but it's okay. Maddie said she'll learn how to ride one, so she's already committed. And it is supposed to help give people the ability to be highly mobile, to go to classes, to see their grandparents, to go to hospital care and medical care without having to buy cars that cost thousands and thousands of dollars and are just awful for the environment. I just want to share with you that the Bronx did win 2 of the initiatives. It was heartbreaking to keep hearing, and I've read about this for years, over and over again, that the infrastructure improvements that have been made since the 1950s that affect the Bronx has caused the people who live in the Bronx, many of them who live here now in Austin, they have the highest asthma rate of anyone in the United States, presumably actually in the world, except the world doesn't do the kind of data analysis that the United States does. Far from where we live. Yonkers has a similar problem because of the so-called urban improvements that were made with all good intentions, I am sure. It's really caused some significant health issues, congestions, all sorts of problems. We don't have that size of a problem, but we do have a topography that's challenging, and we do have a densely populated population, and I think this will be something that's really worthwhile for people. And it'll be a lot of work the next 2 years. And when successful, which it will be, because we in Austin will make it successful, our neighboring towns, Jamie, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it's Tarrytown, I think it's Croton, what's the other town?
Dobbs Ferry,
And the fourth, the fourth,
the
town of Austining.
town of Austin, yeah.
And then they automatically participate. And when this succeeds and we go through some of the hiccups, they too will get grants to further their alternative mobility work. It was a very interesting conference, by the way. We learned a lot. And yes, at the end we get this. Where's the camera? I was expecting something huge and meaningful, but we got this. The more important part is it's $7 million. And
Wanted a
it's-
big check.
we really wanted a big check so we can all stand there and take a picture. Everybody was super excited, and it was really spread out throughout New York State for cities, and New York City got a bunch, Buffalo, etc. But we are the only ones in Westchester. We're not the only ones that applied, but we're the only ones that won. And so I'm hoping to have a little bit of time to also review some of the other initiatives because they're really interesting, and I think the school system should hear about some of them. There is like a trolley-like electric thing that's being done out in Long Island that we've talked about. So there's some really cool things that Revel is really doing. I didn't realize they were a Brooklyn-based company or a New York City-based company, and they won, and they're doing some really cool things. So thank you to all of you. And of course, the elected officials, because we were ahead of the game and we talked about it, passing the right legislation up front. The consultants were super grateful that we were so supportive of their initiative, and congratulations to them as well. But, you know, hopefully we will hear more about this as it rolls out, and it's a 3-year project. So I think I covered that. Jamie, what did I forget? Jamie showed up like at an ungodly early hour this morning because we were the second speakers, and it's a little it's nerve wracking because there's like 200 people in there and they're all like engineers and they all know all the stuff. So we were a little nervous, but Jamie showed up to like make sure everything, but she showed up so early because apparently no traffic this morning. What did I forget? Any major,
I don't think that you forgot anything. I think we learned a lot about what other communities in the state are doing and how we might be able to take some of those opportunities and bring them here. One of the big goals of this program is for scalability and for doing it outside of each community. So once, say, we do what we're doing with for Project Mover, there's the thought that we could take that and share that with other communities for them to do, and then vice versa. And I think that there were a lot of other things that other organizations where they won, where we might be able to scale that to our size. But we
yeah,
need to see that it works for them first.
right? And the goal of this was underserved communities, because wealthier communities sort of take care of themselves, or communities that have corporations and corporate taxes, where the part of the planning is to think through this stuff, or they get, grants from Tesla to do like really wonderful things. So this really was a focus about underserved communities that have serious issues that they otherwise would not be able to do this kind of work. And it does put them up for more grants. I just want to say that we've been told that before, that once you get on the radar, you are then eligible for others. And it was really clear today that that was the case. And we met some really interesting people of all ages who are just like unbelievably smart about the environment. And many of whom grew up in the Bronx and in Red Hook and Brooklyn and really are staying in their community to make things better. And that is really, it was great. It was great. Okay. So I'm super excited. I don't even feel like having a meeting. I feel like with such a high note, it's not going to get better than this, but I guess we still have to have a meeting. Are there any other announcements or anything? Just because. Oh, Jamie, we forgot the big thing. We have 4 major stakeholders we have to thank. We have
Oh, right.
seen-
Yes, of course.
the
I can
four
barely hear you. I'm
stakeholders
sorry.
Everybody had stakeholders for input and engagement, but we don't just have to input engagement. Our stakeholders will actually participate in the rollout of this, and they will receive part of the grant. I don't know the amounts, please don't email me how much they're all getting. It's not really relevant. What's relevant is they will be getting part of the grant, so it's not just the village doing stuff and asking for input, but it's everybody will benefit, all boats are rising, and it's IFCA, it is Open Door, it is Hudson Link, and it is Neighbors Link.
Mhm.
That's why I was a little bit late because I was on the board. I informed the board at Open Door that their recipients, and of course to thank them for being so involved with us, and they'll continue to be involved. So that way the word will get out to a very wide and deep part of our community. Super stoked about that. All right, now I feel like I've covered all the bases. Yay. All right, folks, ready to go.
Up is student report. First up, village manager Karen DeTore.
Thank you, Martha. Good evening, everybody. That is indeed great news. Thank you for the update. Mayor, we're very excited about this, and I do want to just reiterate that grants are great, but they really take on a life of their own and add a lot to the workload. And I have to really commend Maddie Zahatch and Jamie Hoffman for the work that they did. This countless meetings, countless hours, countless planning, a lot of coordination, community engagement, and above and beyond what they're doing on an everyday basis. So really want to thank them and everybody else from the staff and the board who supported this project, because these grants are really important, and we want to be able to get them, and we want to be able to use them to the benefit of the community and take off some burden of the taxpayers and make sure that we can make Ossining the best it can be, the greenest, the best. But we, I thought something was wrong. But we have to, we have to recognize too and acknowledge the hard work that goes into it. So just bravo, thank you so much. It's really just such a nice feeling to know that that work was rewarded. So, and I'd also like to thank everybody for the hard work they did for preparing this year's budget. As we've opened the hearing tonight, I want to thank the staff and the board. Hours and hours and hours also go into the budget, line by line, page by page, and many, many, many pages. So thank you to everybody. And thank you, Treasurer Brennan, who is zooming in tonight. Fabulous work by the finance department and everybody else. Everybody sharpened their pencils and made sure that we were looking at the budget from all different angles, knowing that we're going into a year where certain costs beyond our control are going to be higher, and we want to make sure that we're being as efficient as possible. So thank you for that as well. Also, some good news on the environmental front. This New York State has approved the Drinking Water Source Protection Program plan, and that is on our agenda tonight. So the board will be voting on a resolution to adopt that plan. This was a plan that also has been took a lot of work from volunteers, from consultants, from staff, and it's designed to protect our watershed around the Indian Reservoir. So another toehold in making sure that we're as sustainable as possible and that we're as forward thinking as possible. And this was also done through grant funding that was secured some years ago. So thank you to everybody for that. This week, Maddie and I attended a webinar, participated in a webinar for the New York Conference of Mayors. It was their legislative agenda webinar. So they have several priorities, which include increasing state aid to cities and villages, providing dedicated funding for local water and sewer infrastructure. We have news on that too. Increasing highway funding, removing the tax caps, disincentives for economic growth, enhancing tools to address vacant, distressed, and abandoned properties. A lot of good information on code enforcement and things that we could be doing that we hadn't. Some of it we were anticipating, but also a lot of information from other communities who share some of the same issues that we do. There's also an agenda item to limit application cost of the prevailing wage mandate, which is an unfunded mandate for many communities, amending civil service appointment process. This is something that we really struggle with, and it's, while the civil service provides a lot of benefits to the labor force, there's a certain level of bureaucracy that sometimes makes it challenging to be able to hire as quickly as we would like to, and to also make sure that all people know about these jobs. And it's a little bit of a bureaucratic process, so making that a little bit more streamlined would be most helpful. Allowing public safety considerations and bail determinations, ensuring broadband access and accountability, and increasing investments in water protection and contamination research and response. So all these things touch Ossining as well as our neighboring communities and communities throughout the state. So we're very glad to be working with the folks at NICOM. It's a great source of information for us, and it keeps us, it gives us a lot of opportunity and ability to navigate some of the more challenging issues we have to face. There is also, if you remember, we got an award and we had 80 trees planted. The 1-year inspection will happen tomorrow, and we have George Propus, our regional forestry expert, coming down from the DEC to inspect our trees and see how they're doing. So we're excited. That'll be tomorrow. And we got good news on our Indian Brook water treatment plant. The new plant, after 6 years, the Department of Health has approved our plans for the new water treatment plant. So we're very excited about that. That is a significant accomplishment, again, that took a lot of work and a lot of time. But we're looking forward to being able to go to bid for the water treatment plant and make sure that we have the water infrastructure, water treatment infrastructure to ensure quality, pure water, drinking water for many, many years to come. And that is pretty much sums it up for this week. So I want to thank everybody. We have a lot going on, a lot of really good projects, a lot of big projects, a lot of hard work, but thank you to everybody for making it happen.
Corporation Counsel?
Thank you, Martha. Good evening, folks. A couple of things in terms of future land use board meetings. We have a planning board meeting this coming Tuesday, which is the 22nd. The zoning board meeting from last night was canceled because we didn't have enough people for a live quorum. We had folks who could have attended remotely because they were ill, but we didn't have enough. So therefore, there will be a special meeting on the 29th, which will deal with all matters which had already been on the agenda. So that will be on. The other matters, which were new matters, will be on the meeting. I believe it is December the 13th. So just folks know that if you want to watch zoning board or planning board meetings, we actually will have 2 more still this month. Planning next Tuesday, and the following Tuesday it will be zoning board of appeals. Tonight's agenda sees a number of contracts coming before the board. One with regard to drug testing, another with regard to our planning consultant, also some proposed license agreements, and changes to our fee schedule. Also, last week, the Office of Cannabis Management. I love getting emails from the Office of Cannabis Management. It's like, I get them from Massachusetts, the Cannabis Commission. So someone's going to go through my emails one day and wonder exactly what's going on. But
I'm beginning to wonder.
last week, well, it's much thicker paper lately. After this semester. But last week, the state issued a 28-page guidance for adult use retail dispensaries, which I'm in the process of going through. But 2 days later, a judge in Albany issued a preliminary injunction against the issuance of cannabis dispensary licenses, the initial group, including licenses within the Hudson Valley. There is a constitutional argument that it essentially discriminates against out-of-state businesses. So that has to get resolved. But the guidance document is important because while the procedures are not yet out, the rules and regs, this is the document that the Office of Cannabis Management will follow with regard to issuance of licenses. So it is something that we'll be reporting back to you folks on as we proceed. And later in tonight's meeting, we will have a further discussion on Local Law 1 of 2022, which was previously Local Law 13 of 2021, which is the revision to the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board. As I will advise the board, with the assistance of Trustee Lopez, we did have discussions with both the Police Reform Advisory Committee and the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board about the revisions. Many of those comments have already been put into the document that is before the board now, and I look forward to that discussion. Thank you.
So recovering from my own bronchitis of last week. Sorry about that. So question for you, if people are interested in opening, because we did get one email from a cannabis shop they want informational, whatever, what's the process? Well, I mean, we only have one, but if we have more, I'm sort of, do we take them one by one? They're meeting with you, they're meeting with trustees, what's the deal? Once it says, I'm interested, I have businesses elsewhere. What's the process here?
Well, right now, there's no licenses that can be issued. The state
Correct,
can't issue
correct.
anything. But in terms of this village, the board did have a discussion a few weeks back at a work session in terms of what they would want in terms of zoning and things to look at. So that's something that, I will be discussing with our planning consultant so that we can actually put that together into our zoning code. But if someone is interested now, I think one person actually gave a specific street address where they would
Yes,
be interested
so
in
a
doing that.
specific location, yeah.
And a specific location. I think the matter is that they should talk both through village staff at this end as well as planning staff,
Mhm.
because certainly there will be planning applications that have to come in there. And again, as I said, these guidelines will start going over to see exactly what the process is. But right now, if people are interested, I think we should certainly, take in whatever interest they have and take it from there.
Okay. Great.
I think they were interested in a growing operation, not a.
Yeah,
They were not a dispensary.
Yeah.
They were looking to actually provide product which would go.
They want to do
dispensaries.
indoor growing
Exactly.
at
right.
an industrial building.
I know, it just occurred to me though that we should put some process in place so that, who does it go to when these calls come in? I mean, they'll start coming in at some point, I would think. Okay. Martha?
Police Chief Kevin Celeste.
Good evening. Not quite so exciting from the police department today, just a few quick things from us. This past couple of weeks, we've wrapped up our second half firearms qualification, so everybody's through that. We've had Lieutenant Zimmerman and Officer Tompkins who were down at the police academy for the last week. They are New York State certified defensive tactics instructor trainers, so they've been training instructors from all over Westchester County. Last week, I attended the New York State Association of Chiefs of Police and New York State Sheriff's Association Joint Leadership Conference, which was held up in Glens Falls for a couple of days. And the rest of our time primarily is taken up with personnel issues that we'll be excited to talk about soon. Lots of interviews for promotions, appointments, and hiring. That's it for now. Thanks.
Okay.
Next on, we have organizational announcements. Is there anybody who would like to make an organizational announcement? If so, please click your virtual hand.
Yeah, we have no one in the room here. So Jamie, you seeing anybody who would like? to
There
make a-
are two guests
Yeah.
here, but they have not, I think one is definitely not going to raise their hand. Actually, I don't, the other person, I'm not
No,
sure.
But no one's raising their hand?
No one is raising their hands, no.
Okay, next.
Next up is public comment on agenda items. This is an opportunity for people to address the board on any of the resolutions on the agenda tonight.
All right, so this would be, anybody has comments, up to 4 minutes for the resolutions on tonight's agenda.
Would they also be able to speak up on the public hearing since we still have that open?
Yep.
That is also an option.
And one of them, the other one was closed.
Mhm.
Jamie, you seeing any hands?
There are no hands.
There are no hands. We will move on.
Moving on into visitor recognition, is there anybody here who would like to address the board on issues not related to the agenda but are relevant to the common good of the village? If so, please click on your virtual hand.
No hands.
There are no hands?
Okay,
Okey dokey.
so we move on to village board resolutions. Approval of minutes, October 19, 2022. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby approves the minutes of the October 19, 2022 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Oh, now you came in loud and clear, Omar. Thank you.
Approval of minutes, November 2nd, 2022. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby approves the minutes of the November 2nd, 2022 regular meeting as presented. Do I have a motion?
Omar,
Second.
any comments? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Approval of voucher detail, November 16, 2022. Resolved that the Board of Trustees of the Village of Austining hereby approves the voucher detail report dated November 16, 2022 in the amount of $643,215.56. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Sale of 2 State Street, 97.07-2-2, whereas section C3-12B of the Village of Austin Charter states, the Village Board of Trustees may purchase, hold, and convey real property in the name of the village. Every conveyance by the village shall be executed in its corporate name by the mayor pursuant to a resolution of the Board of Trustees. And whereas New York Village Law Section 1-201(1) provides that the village shall have power to take, purchase, hold, lease, sell, and convey such real and personal property as the purpose of the corporation may require. And whereas, in furtherance of the public interest inconsistent with the authority of section C3-12B of the Charter and section 1-102 the Village Law, the Board of Trustees has determined that the village-owned property at 2 State Street, tax map designation 97.07-2-2, is no longer needed for public purposes and wishes to convey the property. And whereas the village manager, on behalf of the village, entered into negotiations and came to terms of the conveyance of the property of OVO Property Group LLC for $40,000. Now therefore be resolved that the Board of Trustees authorizes the conveyance of real property located at 2 State Street at OVO Property Group LLC for $40,000. And be further resolved that the village manager is authorized to enter into a contract of sale and to tender a deed with any other related instruments in accordance with the negotiated terms and conditions, so documents being subject to review and approval by the Corporation Council. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agreement with Empire Consulting, resolved that the following review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Empire Consulting, 65 Reading Road, P.O. Box 578, Georgetown, Connecticut, 06829-0578, to provide drug and alcohol testing services, including employee supervisor education training for a term from January 1st, 2023 to December 31st, 2024. And be it further resolved that the scope of services to be provided by Empire Consulting is detailed in Appendix A of the agreement. And be further resolved that for the fee of the services to be performed by Empire Consulting are detailed in Appendix B of the agreement. And be further resolved that the fee schedule in Appendix B of the agreement will be guaranteed for the term of the contract, except for drug testing fees for on-site or clinic. In the event that the Department of Transportation requires additional testing or adds to the drug panel testing, Empire Consulting will have the option to impose a one-time increase, which increase shall not exceed more than 5% for the DOT, Department of Transportation, or non-DOT drug tests. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Any comments?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Agreement of planning consultant services. Resolved that following review by the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign an agreement with Nelson Copeland Boards LLC, 156 Route 59 Suite C6, Suffern, New York, 10901, to provide professional environmental and planning consultant services for a term from December 1st, 2022 through December 31st, 2023, and be further resolved that the scope of services, including municipal services, land use application review services, and additional planning services, are detailed in Section B of the agreement, and be further resolved that the fee schedule is detailed in Section C of the agreement. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Comments? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Reappointment to the Board of Ethics. Resolved that the Board of Trustees reappoints Claudette Tuck to the Board of Ethics for a term commencing on January 1st, 2023, and expiring on December 31st, 2025. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I will just comment that Claude Tusk has been on the committee. Is this his second term or third term?
Second term.
Second, and so we're glad to have him re-up as a volunteer for at least another term. Do you want to reach out and let him know? Do you want me to do that?
I'll be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Reappointment of Corporation Council. Resolved that the Board of Trustees reappoints Stuart E. Kahan as Corporation Council of the Village of Austin for a 3-year term commencing on January 1st, 2023, and expiring on December 31st, 2025, and be further resolved. The Corporation Council salary for 2023 will be $178,091.55, payable in equal monthly installments consistent with village practice. Salary increases for 2024 and 2025 will be at the percentage provided to all village employees consistent with the current CSEA contract. Such salary increases will be implemented on the first and second anniversaries of the January 1st reappointment date, and be further resolved that the mayor is authorized to sign the employment agreement on behalf of the Board of Trustees. Do you have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Any comments?
Stuart is great.
Yay, Stuart.
Thanks, Omar. No, but it's a pleasure, not just you know, when we get to our employees, when we have to reappoint them, like this, is really a pleasure to work with everyone, throughout the village, and it's also a pleasure to work with Stuart. Thank you for everything that you do for us, not just for us, but literally for anybody that calls the office.
Oh, don't say that. Oh, my God.
No, but he does.
Don't call him.
He does. He actually does. You know, and thank you for, literally for being here almost 24/7. That's why I feel sometimes, because I'm not gonna go into too many details, but it's really nice to see you here every day, Stuart. So thank you so much. I'm sorry, Bob.
Go ahead. Oh, yeah. I was just gonna say that, you know, the village oscillates from having people for a very long time, and then we went through a period of lots of people over a short period of time, and they're all like good reasons and good intentions, but I have to say that I think we really have a team in place that can get a lot of stuff done. And I've said this 100 times, people are bored hearing me, but I don't care. Teams always produce greater results than any single individual. Doesn't matter how brilliant you are and how hardworking, one person cannot carry things. So Stuart is a part of, I think, a really great team. A month ago, we re-upped, I think, a month or two. I don't know how long it's been now. For the village manager, 2 months, a year ago. Yeah, it was June. And, you know, Maddie, we moved you into, you know, a larger managerial role. We have an attorney who's been with us now, helping for yet another 3 years. That adds consistency, but it's also because you guys are good at what you do, and you're not the only ones. You're just the ones in the room, and we're talking about Stuart. But Stuart's been a pleasure. There's a lot going on. There's gonna be a lot going on in the next 18 months, 2 years, a lot of contracts of all sorts and size. And we talked during the budget, all kidding aside, because it's still open, that we think there'll be higher legal fees, not because of Stuart, but because there are just more things. He's gonna be busier. I keep trying to encourage him to get more help. It's good stuff, though. These are all really great stuff between the grants and negotiations with different employment issues. Some are not so great stuff that we have that we deal with and all that, but that's okay. And then there's every year with the budgets and benefits and personnel, sorts of like intricate, large and small things. And Stuart also helps residents when they have questions about how things work in a village. It's not so easy sometimes to understand how things work, and it really helps people out. So much appreciated. Welcome for another 3-year term. And I didn't want to skip you, but I feel like I did accidentally.
Good to have you back.
There we go. Okay.
Let me just say thank you
Please.
to all of you. It is a rare pleasure to have a job that you actually find something different literally every single day. You know, they don't teach a municipal law course in law school because they couldn't, because it would be everything and anything. I have the opportunity to work with as fine a staff as I know, both on the second floor here and in all of the departments. They are phenomenal in everything that they do. It is a pleasure to deal with them, even when my door is closed, and some people will go, what is he doing in there all that time? But and to the board, thank you for your continued support. Martha and you folks in the clerk's office are always helpful. I do wish to just give a very brief thank you to my far, far better half, Mrs. Kahan,
And I was gonna say something. I was.
who knows about the long meetings and knows what it's like. We used to say that I had the shortest commute when she worked in Manhattan, but she now just goes down 2 flights of stairs. So I forfeited that to her. But she keeps me on the straight and narrow. So for that, I thank her. And she also really bakes great. If any of you ever come here and she has baked, come upstairs.
I'm just gonna say, Stuart, I've been hearing about this. I don't see any cookies at any of our meetings.
You know what?
That was
That's
really
what-
good last time.
She did actually ask if I should bring something tonight. and I
Well, tonight would have been a nice,
But I
we should have brought something.
We
frankly.
will have this
Okay.
as much to, but thank you all. I do appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. Listen, I think that a lot of families, spouses, I don't know what people think about civil servants. I don't know what they think about municipalities and staff that works there. But I could tell you, having been in this chair, there are a lot of evenings and a lot of weekends. I kid you not, that Jamie Hoffman is still working, and she must have left the house at 5 o'clock this morning and worked every minute of today. She wasn't sitting around. That's a simple example just today, and that's not to take away from everybody else. So I think families do sacrifice. People get paid, but nevertheless, there are sacrifices. And it's nice to take a moment and thank them for it. And I'm not even doing that just to kiss up to your wife for the cookies. I'm actually being sincere about that. Okay, we're in a good mood. Let's keep that mood going, I hope. Where are we in the
I think we need
vote?
a vote, yeah. All those
We
in
need a
favor?
vote.
Yeah.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Oh, I
Aye.
think said he's great, so I'm taking that as an aye.
That's an
Okay.
aye.
Next,
Authorize a license agreement with Verizon for 21 State Street 97.07-3-87, whereas Verizon is working on a project to provide Verizon Fire services to 70 to 80 Spring Street. And whereas when Verizon attempted to pull cabling to the conduit to feed 70 to 80 Spring Street, a blockage was discovered approximately 15 feet off of State Street on the property at 21 State Street, Austining Volunteer Fire Department headquarters, which property is owned by the Village of Austining. And whereas Verizon seeks to dig at the location where the blockage is located, repair the conduit, and then restore the area. And whereas since the work proposed by the Verizon would be on village-owned property, a license agreement authorizing Verizon to enter upon and work on village-owned property is necessary. Now therefore be resolved that upon review, the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign a license agreement with Verizon regarding access to village-owned property located at 21st State Street, 97.07-3-87. Have a motion?
So move.
Second.
comments?
Stuart.
I did make the request. that
You were,
asked,
so,
And they will repair within the area that they're working in. So they will not go beyond that. But I did make that request and they said, we understand the request, but we're just gonna do it in that area, which is actually off of the apron. So it's actually much closer to the back.
To the post office fence, right?
Basically,
That way.
so they just have to go in that direction and they need to do this so that they can provide the service to 70-80.
So far, all the work,
Especially since everything's being recorded now, that would be really a shame if that happened. No, I mean, they'll fix what they'll fix, but,
Yes.
That's what it is.
okay.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Additions to fee schedule, town tow hookup fee. Resolved that effective November 17, 2022, the following amendment has been made to the 2022 Village of Austining fee schedule, section 247-13 towing and storage charges, 247-13 towing and storage charges, $150 maximum for straight tows, $30 per day for storage after the first 24-hour period. Add $75 for tow hookup fee. Is that a motion?
So move. Second.
I'm gonna just come back and we've discussed this. This is not a surprise, correct?
Correct. This was a request from the tow operators who essentially said that there are circumstances where they get there and person suddenly comes out, but if they hook the car up, they generally do get a fee in other municipalities. So we didn't have one, so we put this fee in.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Licensing agreement with Sadie's Home LP, 128 Revolutionary Road. Whereas by deed dated March 1st, 2021, Sadie's Home LP, 33 Hendrick Avenue, Toronto, Canada, became the owner of 128 Revolutionary Road, Austin, New York, 97.19-1-11.1. And whereas on July 26, 2022, the Board of Architectural Review granted the application to Sadie's Home LP to construct a detached accessory garage subject to stated conditions and limitations. And whereas the construction of the accessory garage required a new curb cut on Revolutionary Road. And whereas Sadie's Home LP has proposed to remove trees along Revolutionary Road, which trees are within the village's right of way. And whereas the village's arborist examined the trees along Revolutionary Road in front of number 128, and the arborist of the trees should be removed. And whereas Sadie's Home LP has offered to remove the trees and to replace the removed trees with 13 arborites and 10 hornbeams, which the village arborist has approved as an appropriate planting plan. And whereas since the trees to be removed and the trees to be planted by Sadie Toms LP are within the village's right of way. A license agreement to undertake the work is necessary. Now therefore be resolved that upon review with the Corporation Council, the village manager is authorized to sign a license agreement with Sadie Tom LP for the removal and replanting of trees and arborvitae along Revolutionary Road in accordance with the revised planting plan submitted to the building department. Do I have a motion?
Second.
Any comments? I know we go back and forth on how these trees, when people take them down, because most people are gonna take them down the way they should be, and they're gonna replace them. And I totally get what's happening here. We just have to be really diligent that people aren't just using excuses to take trees down and make sure that somebody follows up with all this.
Right, it will all be in the license agreement. The owner will be required, will essentially be maintaining for, if anything happens within 2 years from the planting, he will deal with that. His original planting plan did not have native trees. That was changed, and that was then approved by our arborist. And the removal of the trees along Revolutionary Road, which is within the right of way, will actually be done by the applicant, because he'll also be doing them along Kemmys Avenue as well. So.
Right. I just, we should also make people aware, I don't know if your office does this too, but on the website, there is a list from the county, and there's a link from the EAC, the village EAC, I'm sure the town as well. There's a list of like 100 trees, and they do update their website that are native, and people, and they're not more expensive than other shrubbery and all that, and I know you guys get a lot of calls in the clerk's office, you should let Sue know, please, that people can just look them up, and oftentimes they save money by buying native versus, they just don't know. You know, they think pine trees are cute, so they buy them. They think bamboo looks really like fun. They don't know that they're invasive and really bad for the environment. So there is a list, and honestly, they actually update that. So yay. And
Yes, if you go to westchestergov.com/trees/street trees, you'll get it. And the hornbeam, which they have, is one of their approved local street trees, which will go up to 30 feet in tall.
yeah, that's great. And our EAC actually took time a few years ago on one of their projects because we didn't have that. It's great.
I just want to mention, we also had a meeting with the arborist, Joe and I, and members of his staff the other day. He's going to help us to have a list that we can actually append to the tree removal permit, so that everybody has the information at their fingertips.
Great.
Nice. Somebody also needs to do the information in Spanish because Vinny told me at the lawnmower shop that he estimates there are 500 landscapers in Ossining. That's his estimate. It's not a data point of any sort, but he has a sense that there are about 500 folks, many of whom are Spanish speaking, or there are also other languages that might also just be helpful. Who knows? You know, doesn't hurt.
We're actually working on that now. We're shortening the form and then it's going to get translated because right now it's several pages long.
Oh, good. Okay.
All those in favor?
Bye.
Opposed? Okay, we have continued business of the board, continued discussion of proposed local law 1 of 2022, revisions to chapter 8 civilian police complaint review board.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. We last discussed this at the October 26th work session. At that time, I indicated that there would be 2 subsequent meetings of the PRAC and CPCRB. Those meetings occurred on November 3 and November 10. Trustee Lopez was in attendance at both. There were comments provided by members. I do want to single out in particular Pastor Mary Pfeiffer, who went through the draft with an eye that one cannot imagine. Where I had the number 12 and it should have been an 11, she said, I think it should be an 11. She talks very, very low. I think it should be an 11, Stuart. I said, oh, if you say it, it's an 11. So she was superb, and everybody else made really very important comments, many of which have already been put into here. I did want to raise 2 things that were pointed out by Jermaine Smith, and then I'll get to the CPCRB comments. In the current revision, we have that you cannot serve on the CPCRB if you have been convicted of a felony that involves an action against a police officer, if you've been on parole or probation within the past 5 years. Jermaine thought that just sort of carving out actions against police was incorrect, and it should basically be potentially all felonies, and just leave it like that. Currently in our code, we basically say if you've had any conviction, you can't serve, which we all thought was a bit overbroad. And so the language that appears in the revision is from the city of Schenectady, which uses that language that if it's a police situation. Peekskill, which recently adopted a civilian review board, modeled in a great part on ours. Their exemption is if anyone is convicted of a sexually based felony, they cannot serve. I essentially leave it up to the board as to what they think is best. As I said, those were the two examples I came across. Other cities in the state don't actually have that exemption, but basically leave it up to the Board of Trustees in deciding who should or should not be on it. That tends to get a little bit subjective and can potentially create issues as to what you allow this person on, what you didn't allow that person on. But if you say that it's a felony for this particular type of crime, which is what they've done in Schenectady, that would be, I would suspect, although I've not spoken to the Schenectady Corporation Council, that the language is in there because the view is that if you've been convicted of a felony involving a police officer, likely you might have a bias against the police, and therefore you might not be the best person to be on the CPCRB. Just a thought. But that was one of Jermaine's comments. He was not opposed to having a blanket exemption for those convicted of felonies, but he didn't just want the carve out. So
But I read that in blue because we're up to, color coding and all the
Right.
changes, which I appreciate, because otherwise it's really difficult to follow. I actually, I read it that way, like his comment, because you put it that why a felony is fine, actually, but why only against the police, correct? That's the,
that was the gist of
but
it.
I agree. I mean, a felony, and I do understand why it was done that way, but I don't see a downside to saying a felony, but it does say later on in your explanation that if somebody served time for whatever crime they committed, that should not be held. Is that a separate issue, or is that, did I misread that one?
No, let me just,
Because that was to me like the part B of this sort of.
well,
conversation.
if it's, I think, more than 5 years, they.
Correct, then they
would be
can, they
eligible.
should be able to serve because they served their time. And the
Exactly
And the
correct.
concept is, and I know people differ about what serving time means, whether it actually means that you paid for the crime, or it means, there are all sorts of beliefs, but I sort of like the logic. I'm only one vote, but for me, I agree with Jermaine, that I don't see why it wouldn't be just commit a felony versus just against, the police, but that's, and we can get to the other topic later, but
Sure.
I agree with that statement. I don't know if that requires you to make yet more changes, but, and I don't know, Omar, if you just let us know if you have a comment, because you've been working diligently as the liaison on this.
Yeah, for sure. I would say that what's important is to put this into context. So we have had people that have applied to be a part of the Civilian Police Complaint Review Board that have had a conviction of having some sort of issue in their past with the criminal justice system. And our current law excludes them from being able to serve. Particularly in cases where it happened many decades ago, it seemed like it was overly rigid, particularly for those kinds of cases. We have not really, to my knowledge, had someone with a felony background, whether against a police officer or not, apply for the CPCRB. It could happen, but we're not talking about something that comes up every year or every other year. We've never seen it. And so whether we say against a police officer or in general, I am generally indifferent. I think that in general, I would be fine going in your direction, Mayor, of saying any felony at all. I'm fine with that, considering the fact that we're not talking about a common issue.
I forgot to mention one more point I want to make, which is, these are volunteer positions. When we ask people to step up and we interview, we actually can choose anybody. We aren't actually obligated. It isn't like we have job descriptions for all these volunteer jobs, to be honest with you. This is very specific. But the reality is that sure, if this committee thinks that's important, but the reality is that when we interview people and if we decide that somebody just for whatever reason we decide isn't suitable, that's our prerogative to appoint people or not appoint them. So I just want to keep the bigger picture here. We don't go through a checklist and say, you met this, therefore we are obligated now to hire you. These are not jobs and we are not obligated. But I would look at this more as a GPS and a compass of some of the parameters so that when people apply, they should actually know some of the parameters. I think that that would be helpful and not be upset or surprised. But to be clear, the board appoints based on the criteria that they choose to appoint.
And I do acknowledge Jermaine's point, which is that we're setting up this particular restriction, but you can serve on the board of trustees and have a felony background. And so why is it that you can be in the decision-making position and have this kind of background? You can't be in the advisory board and have this kind of background. I understand where he's coming from. Nevertheless, this is, we've had this conversation many, many times. Yeah. There are restrictions for certain positions, volunteer positions on the ethics board, being a lawyer, landlord-tenant relations, being a landlord or a tenant or neither, things like that, that don't apply to the BOT either. And so I'm comfortable.
And I do, because we have gone through this, and I do disagree with his comment because we are not appointed. We are elected. And if the public wants to elect someone who has served time, then they will elect someone who serves time. And if they don't want to elect someone who serves time, the public has elected people who have died in the process and they still make it to the ballot. So that is actually to me not as an important issue because there's a vast difference between elected positions and appointed positions. But I think the rest of the conversation is pretty valid. Now, I don't want to be the only one talking, so I'm sorry. A lot of caffeine today. So if anybody else has a comment, but I think we're in agreement. So it really is, does anybody disagree with this? Because right now there's an agreement here to move forward on this particular bullet point, if you will. When you read, there's a bunch of others, but we're getting to the gist of it. That one back to you. I feel like that.
Reading some of the emails that was early today, I will agree with you, Mayor. So I'm okay with putting the way it is right now. So thank you.
And I think Stuart's got a couple more, right?
Yeah,
that was a couple, and we're okay. So we can move on now.
And that language can easily be revised.
Yeah,
So that's fine. Jermaine had another point, which, as Trustee Lopez and I know, he has raised before on the issue of training, which is sort of an analog to one of the things he mentioned with regard to the issue of the felony, which is that you're requiring that CPCRB members have certain training, but the Board of Trustees, which ultimately would act to decide a disciplinary case, has no such requirement. And so he said, well, why should there be essentially training requirements? I should point out that I have not come across any CPCRB in the state that does not impose training requirements for members. What was done with this legislation is that the training was actually cut back to just 6 topic areas as required and other topic areas as needed, rather than having, I think we had originally 13 topic areas. So that was another comment from Jermaine.
Yeah.
Again, I throw that open to the board.
I'll go back to we're elected and we have access to lots of professionals who advise us as needed on a plethora of issues that come in front of us. Tonight would be an example. We look to volunteer organizations and people volunteer. If they don't want to be part of it, that's okay too, whether it's land use or otherwise, that need to have some basic training so that they can advise the board on various issues. When it comes in front of us, Based on recommendations, we get advice as needed to make decisions. The discussion of the training of elected officials, I could go right up to the President of the United States. You don't need to be trained in anything to be President of the United States. It's not a comment on past presidents. You can come from any background and do anything you want. It goes right up to the president and everybody else. So that is a district elected. We get trained on an as-needed basis. We can have a whole theoretical conversation, but our land use boards get quite a bit of training in order to make decisions. So it is not unusual. The Board of Ethics has New York State registered attorneys who must be kept certified and pass all their exam and stay certified. Therefore, they are trained in the practice of law. And the list goes on from one piece to another. I think even the historical, I think one person has to be an architect or something in order. So it is very common. And for me, we've had this conversation and I've actually given it a lot of thought, but that's where we are, right? Anybody else have, I mean, we've discussed this a lot, but anybody else want to add or subtract from anything? And Omar, if you raise your hand and want to say something, please let us know.
No, ditto.
Okay. So I'm not looking at my cell phone, except that I'm reading your note with all the,
Next,
oh,
those
I'm
were,
sorry. Did you say you wanted to say something? Oh, okay, sorry.
those were primarily
Okay.
the substantive issues I wanted to discuss raised by this PRAC. As I said, Pastor Pfeiffer did raise a number of issues. Those have already been changed. There were, some language things. Those have all been taken care of, and I thank her for that. At the CPCRB, Chairperson Cabrera raised a question with regard to the language that should be in the complaint.
Right.
As you will recall, the original revision was that we quoted directly from the statute, the penal law section. That has since been changed in the latest revisions, where it would simply say the complaint form should include a statement that the filing of a complaint is not a bar to filing a lawsuit for injury or damages, nor a bar to prosecution for perjury for filing a false complaint. That is language that is taken directly from the city of Schenectady. What I liked about it is it said both that it doesn't stop you from suing, but you could also have a risk if you basically bring a false statement. Ms. Cabrera, actually, she wasn't opposed to the language. She thought the language perhaps could be softened. She was concerned that there might be individuals who might not understand what that language meant. I leave that up to the board because I don't know if there's much more wordsmithing that can actually be done with that. But that was her primary issue with regard to that language.
I mean,
That language in the report, in the.
yeah,
Yes, if
Where is
you look, I'll find you the section where it is. Hang on. When we talk about the complaint, it's further in here.
towards the end, I think.
Yeah, it's towards the end. I will find it. Hang on a second, trustee. Let me just get it for you.
Scope of review.
If you go to the, it's in the complaint process, so it's section. 8-13, well, old 8-13, it's now 8-11,
Right.
subsection E. That may not be the version you have, so let me, I apologize. Do this, look at if you look at the version you have, if you look at the definition of complaint, which is at the very beginning, under section 8.4, the definition of complaint includes the language that I'm talking about.
Okay.
Hard to make legalese sound super friendly, and if you make it too friendly, but maybe Dana, you're like a wizard with words. Look, I think the original issue was, it's very legalese. People will think that they're going to be punished for something, but the reality is, it has to be strong enough that it says, if you're lying, you can be held for that. That's not a minor deal here. It's a serious offense. We want to hear from you, but you can't just exaggerate or lie because it affects people's lives. This is not like a complaint about, a product at a store. This is human beings that are involved on all sides of the equation. So I agree that's a little legalese, but if it's not legalese and it becomes more friendly, I'm not sure how to make it more friendly. Because I think we've changed it a few times, I'm not
We
sure.
have, and we initially, I mean, the first draft was it quoted
Signed it,
directly
even?
from the code.
Yeah,
And
I know.
it was taken out.
Yeah, well, that was honestly, some of us had a little bit of an issue. I mean, I know the point is we've edited it a number of times, and I know she knows that. It's not even a point.
No.
She knows that it's been edited and edited. I don't know how to make it, find it, Dana? Why don't you hand her the piece of paper, maybe, it's
Okay,
faster.
I'll look at, you'll show me later. I don't want to hold it.
Okay, just let me know. And
Yeah, if there are better words, but they still have to say that if you knowingly lie or exaggerate or whatever, you're gonna be held liable.
There were a few issues raised by the CPCRB, not in terms of language, but how the civilian investigator would work.
Right.
Uh, They initially, were under the impression, as I said, in fact, that was in an earlier draft, that the civilian investigator would essentially take over the role of the police. And I said, that's not the plan under what we have here. They would be used on an as-needed basis. There were questions about how will you determine who should be the civilian investigators? I said, that is, we're going to basically put out a call. The board will ultimately decide. At a minimum, they should have knowledge of the department's rules and regulations and at least the 6 areas of core training. So they were satisfied with that.
Right.
There's a provision in here as part of the training that there would be a meeting sponsored by the Board of Trustees with the CPCRB to meet with the public to basically explain what the process is and hear from the public. CPCRB thought that an annual meeting probably is best, and I frankly didn't see a problem with that. My original draft did not have how many meetings there should be. That language is actually from the Peekskill ordinance. My guess is Peekskill put that in because Peekskill does not have a CPCRB or just started it.
They just
So
started.
this is
yeah.
more to just sort of do that, but other than that,
Don't we do like public meetings, like, don't we have the committee come and speak? Is it because they speak to us that it's not considered public? I don't understand.
well, this was more that they would meet in a public forum. It need not even be in a village building. It could be at Star of Bethlehem. It could be somewhere the public would basically, come in and they could say, well, we're having these issues, and so that the CPCRB could hear what's going on. And so I can quote you the
No, I
exact
saw it
language.
in your note. I don't remember this even coming up as a thing before. It felt new to me. Omar, is this like a new thing or is this something?
No, so the idea here is that it's echoing, and Stuart will recall that particular place. It's a city in the United States where they rotate where they have the CPCRB meetings in different places because it's different. Do you remember this, Stuart? Where is this?
Pittsburgh.
In
Pittsburgh.
Pittsburgh, right. So the idea is, if you're looking to spread the word that this particular body exists, and let people know how to submit a complaint, what's going on, then instead of just having village meetings be the place where those things happen, pushing into different places in the community, and having the legislation say once a year, so it doesn't compel them to have to make monthly presentations. But if they want to present more than once a year, they're more than welcome to do so. But this just puts it in writing that at least once a year, they're going into the community and holding a meeting and letting them know about their work.
Okay, so is this to get input from the community or is it to let the community know what they're doing or both?
The language actually says this: all CPCRB members will attend an annual meeting conducted by the village board to educate members of the public on the role of the CPCRB and to enable members and the village board to hear differing perspectives regarding police-civilian interactions.
Okay, so this is interesting because this actually speaks to the topic of, we were one of the first, if not the first, I don't remember, are we the first in the county to have a CPRB? And the only for a long time, but there were issues where people said, that's great, that's a big deal, except nobody seems to know about it. So having it is a good step, except that very few people, if any, know about it. it did come out in some of the focus groups that people kept saying it would be great if we had a place to go to and ask this and that, and things like, but we already do have that. So it did seem that people didn't know. So once a year, the board calls the meeting like for public interaction. I don't know, folks, are we good with this? It's actually in the document, I just didn't understand. Anybody?
I guess, my only probably story can help me out, and I'm sure Omar, obviously, I'm sure there's limitations for them to give information that it may not be purview for them as well. So if they ask a question for one, may not be related to an investigation they had or a case that they had.
It's more general information type thing.
Are they
That's right.
fictional?
That's right.
Seems logical to me.
I think that's fine. I mean, we always talked about, how much more education can we bring to the community? I think this is a good piece for that. So, yeah.
Dana, you good? Okay,
So
seems
except-
good. And Omar, I'm sure there's agreement because he's the liaison and he would say otherwise.
So except for hearing from trustee White, if there's any way to sort of soften the language, which I'll send to you. I think we have everything. We'll make the change with regard to
Yeah.
exemptions for felonies. We'll have something, and then I think, early in the new year, we'll be able to have a resolution to call for a public hearing and get it adopted as hopefully local law 1 of 2023.
Okay, well,
that's
I
where we
think
are.
the email started with Omar saying, we're almost there, and I'm feeling like we're there, because this now has had a lot of input from a lot of different people, so should be good.
Yeah, and then I think even before it gets adopted, I think trustee Lopez, you and I can start talking about working on, the application process for folks to be the civilian investigator. Because I anticipate from the discussion that we had with the CPCRB, that they're going to be, they will have either cases where they have questions where they would like to have a civilian investigator, or where they think there's additional investigation they'd like to have done through the auspices of a civilian investigator. So I think they will take advantage of that with the understanding that this board of trustees is the one that appoints the civilian investigator. So it's not an automatic. And,
Right,
and
and
they
I could have
recognize that.
sworn, I may be wrong, I got so many emails from the county, but I could have sworn that the county put something out that they are putting together a panel of investigators.
At the October 26th work session, the county executive said that they were
Right,
coming up with legislation on a police accountability board. I haven't seen the legislation yet, so I
okay,
don't know.
but we
I don't
should
know
keep
where
our
that
eye
is.
out. I
Yes,
could have sworn either he said or was thinking about, well, it would just, let's not duplicate. If there is a group that's signing up as saying like, just like in arbitration, there are arbitrators that are on a list somewhere that've been vetted.
make it
It
easier.
would make our life a lot easier, I'll say that much.
Sure. Thank you, folks.
Thank you, Stuart. Martha, you still with us? Good, somebody has to be.
Okay. So next we have new business to the board. We have agreement with ICT CDS for Enterprise Content Management System Laserfish Cloud. Resolve the following review by the Corporation Council of the Village Managers authorized to sign the authorization agreement with ICT Community Development Solutions, 781 Umbro Road, Rochester, New York, 14624, for the Enterprise Content Management System Laserfish Cloud Electronic Document Management Project, as detailed in the October 27, 2022 proposal. And be further resolved that the cost of the environmental document management project, together with the estimated annual support fee second year forward, will be paid equally by the Village of Austin and the Town of Austin. Do I have a motion?
So move. Second.
Any comments from anyone on this?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Resolution adopting the Austin DWSP2 Drinking Water Source Protection Program Plan, whereas the Village of Austin takes seriously its commitment to protecting and maintaining the quality of drinking water for local residents, and whereas in 2021, the Village applied for an exceed $25,000 grant funding from New York State for technical assistance in preparing a drinking water source protection program plan. And whereas village staff worked with the consulting team from firms Barton and Logoday, H2M Architects and Engineers, and Ecologic LLC, and local stakeholders in Austin and in adjacent communities to formulate the recommendations for the Indian Brook watershed. And whereas the draft plan was presented to the Board of Trustees and the community on August 10, 2022, and whereas on November 15, 2022, the village received notice from New York State that the DWSP2 plan submitted in August 2022 was approved by the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation, DEC, and the New York State Department of Health, DOH, after having been reviewed on its technical merits and completeness. And whereas the adoption of the DWSP2 plan was considered under SCQR and classified as a type 2 action per section 617.5C27, conducting concurrent environmental engineering, economic feasibility, and other studies and preliminary planning and budgetary processes necessary to the formulation of a proposal for action, provided those activities do not commit the agency to commence, engage in, or approve such action, and as such is subject to no further environmental review. Now therefore be it resolved that the village board of the village of Austin hereby adopts the Austin Drinking Water Source Protection Program Plan, DWS P2, effective November 15, 2022. Do you have a motion?
So moved. Second?
Comments? Can you show anything on this? Martha?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? No. And then we just need a second and a motion to close the public hearing for the 2023
Okay,
budget.
before we get there, new business. I sent an email around. The state passed a lower speed limit. I'm losing my voice. We sort of discussed it briefly at a meeting. I don't know where anybody came out on it. The speed limit for the village to be lowered. I only got a couple of emails because apparently in some news articles somewhere, a few towns have been doing that. I don't even have an opinion about it, but.
Mayor, my recollection is that it would be the 25, that
Yeah.
there was a concern with the board because there would have to be an engineering study done
Right,
before we could do that, and that would be something that the village would have to pay for. And it would be basically to go across the entire village. To do that, the statute's written in a way that to do that, there has to be an engineering report that certifies
Oh.
that
I just remembered the whole
does
thing.
that. So that's,
Okay, take
that was part of it.
All right, remind me next time I ask about where we are with it, I could have answered that. So it's not just the cost, it's also just really difficult to go through this whole thing. All right, so we're staying where we are.
It became difficult. It wasn't difficult before.
Okay,
By the state.
well, it probably works for many places except a few, and that's the way it goes. So we're back to, we're not voting on anything. We're back to the public meeting is still open and whether we want to close about the budget. Look how excited Dale looks over there. That's probably why she's been saying this whole meeting. So, anybody out there that would like to discuss the budget? Jamie, any hands up? Because we cut that open. Nope, my gavel ready.
No hands.
No hands. So is there a motion to close the?
The motion we close public hearing on the budget. Second?
Comments on the budget?
Just a few, I guess. Pretty much thank you for everyone that worked really, really hard on this budget. So there wasn't really that much stuff for me to, I tried to, I went back over the weekend, couldn't find anything. So that's the reason why I didn't call Dale on Monday. So I'll email anybody else. So, but thank you. So I do appreciate for every manager, every employee of the village that did this amazing work as well. So thank you so much.
All your fans out there for the past 10+ years are sitting there going, what? What is happening? What did I miss? Because it's rare, but that is a big compliment. Also because the revenues were strong in years, just all kidding aside, because I don't want to be flippant about budgets because only 5 people, which is the 5 of us, can actually approve the budget, which then sets the stage for a whole year. And it is a lot of work, but it's supposed to be a lot of work. It's just that we're not being cute about it. We may not have spent even more hundreds of hours having a discussion about every line item. When revenues are better, let's be honest, it's a little bit easier to also be more generous because there have been years that have been really awful and we've had to lay people off and that'll happen again if the economy turns. But honestly, it's like just like your personal bank accounts. When things are good, you should invest. When things are bad, you have to, tighten the belts. It's no different about municipalities. That's the responsibility and the responsible way to behave. It's a good budget. Dale, is it 10%? What are we going to be announcing? We're reducing by 10% the tax rate? 9.75 or whatever it is.
The tentative budget is a reduction of 9.06. Yes.
Okay, so 9% is closer to round it off. Okay. That's pretty big as far as I could tell. I don't know what the other taxing entities are doing. The town finished, I didn't look. I don't know where the school is gonna end up. On the next round. We'll see. They're the largest part of the taxing entity. Does anybody else have anything else to say? Except, okay. You're good. So we got a lot of big capital adventures that we're going to enter. We have multi-year grants that we've accounted for. We have a pretty good revenue street. We're expecting high inflation and we're expecting costs to rise by about 30% across the board. I'm real psyched about the next year. And with some of these grants, they're going to set up the stage for the next, 2 to 3 to 4 years. So this is all really good stuff, and I think we're in a decent position. We're not swimming in money. Just to reiterate that unlike our neighbors that have corporation taxes that carry them, and others that build a market rate, lots of market rate housing that pays, especially in the last couple of years, really nice taxes, and don't have very many nonprofits the way we do. The tax bases are just different. So for us, it's always a little bit like a bigger exercise, in my opinion. But it's one worth having, and I think we came out like in a really good place, and can get some things done. So, Omar, I didn't mean to skip you. I just didn't see your hand up, so you're good. All
Both
right,
hands
ladies and gentlemen, we're in a vote, I believe. Yes? Should we go into the vote? Do we vote on this, or we just say,
But we have to close.
Yeah.
we're closing, we're voting on closing of the public?
All those in favor of closing the public hearing?
Aye,
Aye.
that was the comment section.
Then can I have a motion to adjourn the legislative meeting?
We are going to executive. Legal, personal and legal.
But that doesn't have to be part of executive session.
Okay,
So adjourned for executive session for matters of personnel regarding specific persons.
okay, got it.
So moved. Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Ladies and gentlemen, this closes this meeting. Oh, look at this, 9 p.m. Very exciting. Thank you all, and we will see you next Wednesday. No,
Next Wednesday is our first meeting for Project Mover.
that's my hesitation. What, Jamie?
We have a town hall scheduled at the library at 7 p.m. next week on Wednesday night.
November 30.
I can't hear a word you guys are saying.
November
Thanksgiving
30th.
next week.
2 weeks.
Oh my gosh, next week's Thanksgiving. I knew that. It's just a long day. Oops.
That is I am now. Look at that. So it's the 30th.
Sorry.
Okay. Have a good night.